I think we have time enough to have one more low-budget binge to stuff in your stocking right before Christmas. I know my voice sounds terrible. I'm going to try to plow through this. Just bear with me, folks. Welcome back to ML Miller Frights. I'm ML Miller. Before we begin, please do me a favor and punch that like button down below. Share this video with all of your social media addicted pals. Click subscribe to this channel and ring that bell for notifications. Low Budget Binge is where we venture down the path less traveled and look at low budget, no budget, and sometimes international films that never get that top billing you see with the usual Hollywood fare. I'll indicate in the review down below where you can find these films along with their trailers. Here we go. Scream of the Blind Dead is new, streaming exclusively on Full Moon Features, and will premiere on Amazon Prime December 27th. It's directed and written by Chris Alexander. A young woman named Virginia, played by Stephanie Delorme, attempts to escape her checkered past by hopping a train and then hopping off a train in the middle of nowhere. It's there that she stumbles upon the ruins of a castle and encounters an undead knight who pursues her relentlessly. I'm a fan of the original quadrilogy of Blind Dead films, at least I think I've seen them all, as 70s filmmaker Armando de Osorios was able to highlight the horror of the titular undead and unsighted Templar knights unleashed rather well. But even those films were low on story and high on flair and art house sights and sounds. Osorios' films were littered with scenes of the blind dead pursuing maidens in torn clothing, blasting out wonderful synth scores, and relying on the simple visage of the monsters to cause gasps. So much of the films were made from simple shots of women running through fields, extreme close-ups, and slow-mo shots of the blind dead, shambling on the ground or riding on horseback. These were schlocky films which relied on atmosphere more than story depth. I wasn't a fan of the recent Curse of the Blind Dead remake, as it felt like it lacked any kind of flair and creativity compared to the originals. But writer, director, musician Chris Alexander, who has been responsible for some meditative art house horror films such as Blood for Irina, Queen of Blood, Blood Dynasty, Space Vampire, and more recently, It Knows You're Alone, and just last week I reviewed his Girl with a Straight Razor, seems to have what it takes to deliver a film that honors the original Blind Dead series and at least gets the tone and atmosphere near pitch perfect. Like those original films, Scream of the Blind Dead is light on story, but for the most part, it's just a gal running around in a field away from a shrouded knight with a long sword. Combine the lush landscape with the wonderfully moody music, and add some TNA and a little blood, and you've got yourself an honest-to-gosh Blind Dead flick. Now, coming in at just under 40 minutes, I think the film could have added a character or two and elaborated a bit more on Virginia's backstory, but as a simple film focusing on the cat and mouse between a desiccated knight and a sweaty gal in skimpy clothing, it comes out pretty entertaining. Alexander at least captures the art house soul of the original series. Don't expect a lot of story with Scream of the Blind Dead. Just use the film as a surprisingly calming, meditative nightmare that gets those shambling skeletons in armor right. I'd love to see a full feature expanding on some of Armando de Osorios' themes, since Alexander has the look and feel down pat. Death Valley is new, streaming on Shudder from Black Fawn Entertainment. It's directed and written by Matthew Ninaber. Beckett, played by Jeremy Ninaber, and Marshall, played by Ethan Mitchell, are a pair of guns for hire sent into a foreign country to recover a scientist, Chloe, played by Kristen Castor, in an underground bunker surrounded by armed militia. Attempting to avoid the militia, the two mercs break through the back door and descend into the darkness, not knowing that there is both an infection spreading to those alive in the bunker, as well as a large monster killing anyone who's left. Death Valley is about as middle of the road as you're going to get. It doesn't have over-the-top action or astounding new ideas. The story is hardly original, as it mixes some Predator with a little Aliens with a little standard jungle action movie tossed in. There isn't anything necessarily wrong with the film, but it never goes out of its way to do anything truly spectacular. Still, it's highly watchable. While the story is quite predictable, it isn't bad enough to turn off. That might not be the best compliment for the film, But it also shouldn't steer you away from Death Valley. It is what it is. God, I hate that term. But Death Valley really is what it is. Jeremy Ninaber is likable enough as your chiseled hero. He spouts lines well and looks stern while aiming his rifle, yet allows the audience to see his softer side as he promises to come home to his wife after this one last mission. Ethan Mitchell is passable as well as the wisecracking sidekick with a quip for everything, even when he's wounded and bleeding. These two try to make their characters less than cliches, but the film really doesn't do much to help them. The monster itself, played by writer-director Matthew Ninaber, looks decent enough, but again, it isn't anything that's going to knock your socks off or send you under the covers. It's a drooling tumor with a KY-slicked bodysuit. It reminded me of a less exaggerated pumpkin head with a bit of the titular character from the old sci-fi movie The Creature. The workable jaw gives it some ways to emote and growl and snarl and bite, but his head is so undiscernible, it looks more like a turd with a mouth than anything else. It may seem like I'm being hard on Death Valley. It isn't a bad film, more of a decent afternoon time waster. It's aspiring for greatness, and maybe if it had the money to afford a larger scope, more distinctive effects, and maybe a recognizable actor or two, it might have been something special. As is, I'm giving Death Valley a mild recommendation for not doing anything wrong, but not necessarily doing anything worth cheering about. The Darkness of the Road is new on DVD, on demand, and digital download from Uncork'd Entertainment and Dark Star Pictures. It's directed and written by Eduardo Rodriguez. Siri, played by the stylist Najara Townsend, is a down-and-out single mother, traveling across the country with her daughter to start a new life anywhere but where they are. When Siri stops at a gas station, she runs into a hitchhiker named Iris, played by Leah Lauren, who helps Siri get her piece-of-shit car started in exchange for the ride. But once the two get down the road a piece, Siri realizes her child in the backseat is gone. With a broken-down car and darkness surrounding them, Siri and Iris realize that there is something truly terrifying circling their car, but that's not going to stop Siri from finding her daughter. The Darkness of the Road is a decent enough movie. It's got well-timed scares, capable effects that are only hinted at through the thick darkness, and a capable lead in Townsend. There are numerous moments of tension and suspense that pay off, showing the director Eduardo Rodriguez has done his homework in how to make a decent, tension-filmed horror movie. There are some great creepy scenes with a monster that looks like a skinwalker of some sort, circling the broken-down car, a gnarly-looking old guy, and a doll with a face only a blind child could love. All of these prove to be fun elements of what feel like a cross between The Hitcher by way of Southbound. But instead of keeping things visceral and grounded, the story begins to unravel into a nightmare realm for Siri, and all logic seems to go out the window. The film becomes more like a waking nightmare, more interested in shocking the viewer with jarring transitions than telling an original, cohesive story. The problem with The Darkness of the Road occurs right at the beginning, as the opening quote basically reveals the ending of the film. Had the opening not begun with those words, I think it might have worked more with me. But because the opening line, accompanied by some very telling images of a woman with a gun to her head, it's pretty evident where this film is going. And when you figure out the hook of the film in the opening seconds, it makes for an arduous journey to make it to the end credits. Taking on a more Jacob's Ladder approach really doesn't do the story any favors, and had the film simply started out without these ominous words and imagery, I think it would have made the end reveal surprising and shocking. As is, this was a well-acted film. Najara Townsend is a fascinating actress to watch, though she is 10 times better in Contracted and The Stylist. The locale is nice and creepy, and when the monster is in the shadows, it works. I just wish the director had chosen to be a little less revealing about the ending in the opening moments. It doesn't need that artsy quote that has been overused in way too many movies. I think in polishing this film with a bit of sizzle at the beginning, it in actuality dullened the rest of The Darkness of the Road. We Need to Do Something. It's available streaming on Hulu. It's directed by Sean King O'Grady and written by Max Booth III. With a tornado thundering outside, a family of 4 takes shelter in a bathroom to ride out the storm. When the tornado passes, the family finds out that a branch has broken through the ceiling and blocked the door, trapping the 4 in the small room. Robert, played by Pat Healy, is busy attempting to block out his problems with alcohol, while Diane, Vanessa Shaw, distracts herself by taking care of the two kids. Bobby, played by John James Cronin, is busy trying to distinguish what kind of thunderstorm is passing overhead, while Big Sister Melissa, played by Sierra McCormick, feels that she might be the cause of all of this destruction outside of the home. See, Melissa has the dark secret involving her relationship with her best friend Amy, played by Lizette Alexis. And that secret seems to have followed Melissa home and is pulling out the worst of her and her family while trapped in this secluded area and in this desperate situation. As tensions rise between all in the family, they desperately attempt to get out and get to the bottom of exactly what's going on. We Need to Do Something is a pretty solid single-location film that would work as an interesting Twilight Zone episode or stage play. It traps 4 talented actors in a small room and basically has them bounce off of each other for the duration. For the most part, this structure works, mainly because the actors are talented enough to pull it off. Pat Healy always gives his all in his performances, and does so here, even when he's playing a somewhat one-note drunk father character. Still, there's something about his performance here that allowed me to actually see through his alcoholic ramblings and find something to feel for the character during his moments of lucidity. And that's all Healy, and I doubt few other actors would have been able to pull that off. The same goes for Vanessa Shaw's Diane, who is obviously cheating on her husband, yet still focuses on her family to get them through this crisis. Sure, little John James Cronin is a young actor, but he does deliver some fun lines that cut the tension, and Sierra McCormick is a strong up-and-comer, able to convey innocence, wonder, and tragedy all at once in her heavily painted eyes. This film works as long as it does because of the strength of these actors trapped in this bathroom. Filmmaker Sean King O'Grady and writer Max Booth III also fill the film with all sorts of strange occurrences that keep the mystery going for the most part. Be it the storm that passes overhead, or whatever kind of monster it is rooting around outside, or the invading snake that gets in through the door, the action keeps pumping forward even without changing locales. I also have to commend the film for not only referencing Ozzy Osbourne's most infamous onstage antics, but actually using Ozzy's voice during one of the film's creepiest of scenes. That was an admittedly nice touch. The problem with We Need to Do Something is that it would make for an awesome half-hour episode in an anthology series, but turns out to be not enough to stretch to feature length, let alone an hour and 45 minutes. Had a solid 30 minutes been trimmed off, I think my attitude towards this one would have been different. But as is, scenes become repetitious and redundant past the 50-minute mark. I like it that the bulk of the action takes place solely in the bathroom, but I think the random flashbacks really only serve to deliver exposition we could have received either through dialogue or communicated via text, as these 4 are very reliant on their technology. The biggest problem with We Need to Do Something is the ending, though. Like most films of this type, a non-ending is used, cutting away to credits before any kind of satisfying wrap-up occurs. It's almost like the film ends with a bad punchline rather than a conclusion worthy of the performances that lead up to it. This left me feeling quite sour leaving We Need to Do Something, and honestly, had the ending been edited and shuffled around a bit, it would have been perfectly fine. Instead, it felt as if none of those in front of or behind the camera knew how to end this thing. And it's too bad because Pat Healy gives a great performance, and there are some really twisted moments of horror throughout We Need to Do Something. I understand not showing horror is often more effective, and We Need to Do Something does that well. But not showing the ending is almost always unsatisfying, and unfortunately, this film does that too. Death to Metal is new on demand from Wild Eye Releasing. It's directed by Tim Connery and written by Tim Connery and Kevin Koppes. An overzealous preacher, played by Andrew Jessup, is put on leave for his outdated and righteous sermons targeting everything from TV to music. Wandering aimlessly after murdering the head priest, stealing a ceremonial robe and a broken cross, the priest falls into a random vat of toxic waste, like you do, and of course becomes a monstrous beast bent on ridding the world of sin. His path crosses with a death metal concert going on in a small town featuring a quartet of gnarly bands. Lead singer Zane, played by Alex Stein, planned on playing the gig with the rest of his bandmates, but they fired him at the last minute, leaving him wallowing in self-pity. But his best friend Mariah, played by Grace Mellon, isn't about to let him get him down and takes him to the concert anyway. right about the same time the demented priest monster goes on a gory rampage. Death to Metal is a well-intentioned little film. While I can't say I'm an expert on death metal, I know a thing or two about a thing or two, and it seems the filmmakers know and love this subject. So while the film might not be the most capably filmed or tactfully acted, its love and understanding of metal and the culture surrounding it feels truly genuine. Fans of this type of music will at least have some fun throat singing and guitar grinding to appreciate, as death to metal almost always has some kind of hardcore sounds playing in the background, either in frame or on the soundtrack. The filmmakers also handle their gore with an iron constitution. The evil priest is a radioactive mess that only the Toxic Avenger would love. It's a fun look for the hooded menace, as he brandishes a broken cross as a giant dagger impaling his sinning victims. Things get quite bloody as the rampage continues, and this one doesn't shy in showing the carnage and the wet stuff splattered all about. Sure, we never really get a good look at the priest under the hood, but if the goofy, puffy, Halloween-gloved fingers are any indication, it might have been a good thing. Still, the lo-fi appreciation for gore is appreciated right back from me. And while the acting may be its worst quality, Death to Metal made me laugh quite a few times, be it the comedic references to metal classics. The priest says, "Hell awaits," to his intended victim, to which a rocker replies, "Slayer's best fucking album, man." And simple goofy sight gags, like the ongoing back and forth between a preteen punk rocker and his dad, are adorably metal. This one's got a wickedly strong, funny bone supporting it all. So I laughed, I rocked out, I enjoyed death metal for what it was. It's not trying to take over the cinema world, but it does try repeatedly to rip out your soul for the dark gods of rock and roll. I'd love to see what the filmmakers could do with some more money behind this production. In a lot of ways, this has the same grungy, fun vibe as Peter Jackson's Bad Taste, and look at the places that guy went once he got a budget under him. It doesn't take itself so seriously, a la Lords of Chaos, and is self-aware enough to know when its genre, both horror and metal, is downright ridiculous. I think you're going to find death metal to be a lo-fi, headbanging good time. Well, maybe not those who don't appreciate the metal, but screw those guys. Screw those guys all the way to hell. Thanks for putting up with my gravelly voice this week. Hopefully I'll be better next time. Have a happy holiday, folks. That'll be it for today. Please chime in down below in the comments and let me know how on the nose or mind-numbingly wrong I am, or you can counter with your own review. So guys, you know how YouTube works. I'd love to be able to dedicate more time to this channel. I'm not monetized yet, so if you want to help me out, remember to hit all the pertinent bells and whistles down below. Want some spooky comics to read? I have 2 new horror comic book trade paperbacks you should look out for. Both Gravetrancers and Pirouette, collecting never-before-published issues, can be found in only the finest of comic book shops. If you're looking for written reviews, you can find them on my website, mlmillerwrites.com. If you really want to show your support, I also have a Patreon page at mlmiller. Look for the link to my Patreon page down below. Thank you so much for your time, and take care.
You're doomed to live the life you're meant to be, stuck inside your reality. You're